Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? The desert sunlight spilled through the open flap of the operations tent, painting long, restless shadows across the map-strewn table. Lieutenant Emily Warren, call sign Ghost Eye, stood silently near the back, her TAC-50 sniper rifle resting against the wall beside her. The others, veterans with weathered faces and quiet authority, spoke over her, moving colored markers across the map with confidence born from years of deployments. She watched their hands, their patterns of movement, their assumptions. Every detail. To them, she was new, young, the only woman in a Marine Raider recon unit that had seen more combat than most divisions combined. To her, they were already missing things. Captain Reynolds's voice cut through the low hum of conversation. Target zone clear. We pack up and move in 10. Copy that, Sergeant Marcus Blackwood said, leaning back in his chair. His eyes never even flicked toward her. Raiders are wheels up. Emily's hand twitched slightly on the table edge. Something in the terrain imagery, something so faint it might have been nothing, caught her attention. She stepped forward. Sir, before we move out, Sector 4 shows. Blackwood's voice overlapped hers. We've already cleared that sector, Lieutenant. No movement, satellites clean. He said Lieutenant like it was a challenge, not a rank. Emily nodded once but didn't step back. Her pulse stayed steady, trained calm behind her still blue eyes. She'd learned long ago to trust what she saw, even when no one else did, especially then. Hours later, the desert heat had become unbearable. It shimmered like liquid glass above the rocks, distorting the horizon into a wavering mirage. The team lay prone along a jagged ridge, scopes sweeping the valley below. A recon sweep, routine. No contact. Target zone clear. Stand down, Ghost Eye. Blackwood's voice came over comms, casual, dismissive. Emily didn't respond. Her cheek pressed lightly against the TAC-50's stock, her finger resting along the trigger guard. Through her scope, she watched dust rise in unnatural swirls, tiny deviations most would ignore. But her brain cataloged them, calculated angles, airflow, vectors. Something was wrong. Permission to maintain position, she murmured into her mic. Negative, Blackwood's tone was clipped. You're seeing ghosts again, Lieutenant. Stand down. Her lips twitched. Ghosts. The nickname had started as a joke in training, how she could disappear into terrain, how she saw things no one else could. But when she joined the Raiders, it became something else. A quiet accusation. The dust shifted again. A flicker of light, metal catching the sun just long enough to betray a shape. Emily's pulse slowed, breath in 4 counts. Out 6. The rhythm her father had taught her back in Montana, lying belly down in the snow, waiting for deer to emerge through pine branches. Through the scope, the world contracted to a tunnel of absolute clarity. And there, hidden beneath a patchwork of camouflage netting, something moved, deliberate, purposeful. She keyed her mic again, steady but firm. Sir, movement in Sector 4. Possible overwatch element 1400 meters 2 o'clock. Permission to ray. Negative. Blackwood didn't even let her finish. You're jumpy, Warren. First deployment jitters. Don't waste our time. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't move. The others began to pack up, their gear clinking faintly against the rock. The desert wind howled softly, carrying with it the ghost of something unseen. Then she saw it. Barely a shift in the camouflage netting, followed by the unmistakable shadow of a rifle barrel sliding into position. The sniper had been waiting. The Americans were silhouetted against the ridge, exposed, unaware. Emily's heartbeat slowed even further. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Target acquired. She didn't ask again. 3 seconds of silence, then the world exploded. The TAC-50 roared, echoing across the barren valley like thunder. Through the scope, Emily saw the impact, a single perfect strike. The enemy sniper jerked back, his rifle spinning from his grasp. For a breath there was silence, then comms erupted. Contact, who the hell fired? Blackwood barked. Emily keyed her mic. Hostile sniper neutralized. He was setting up on your position, sir. Static, then disbelief. Say again. Confirmed kill, she said evenly. One hostile sniper, 1,500 meters west ridge. There was a pause, then a low, almost reverent voice. Holy, she just saved our asses. Emily stayed motionless, scanning for more threats. The barrel of her rifle was hot against her cheek. She kept her breathing measured, her eyes cold. The others couldn't see what she saw, not just the target, but the pattern. How every grain of sand, every movement of wind told a story if you knew how to read it. When Captain Reynolds's voice returned, it was quieter, more deliberate. Warren, maintain overwatch. Team 2, secure enemy position. Minutes passed before confirmation came through. One hostile KIA, Russian-manufactured rifle. Coordinates for the team's exfil route marked on his map. A setup. Emily didn't move, didn't celebrate, just adjusted her scope, watching the horizon. Blackwood's voice came back through the radio, stripped of sarcasm. Good shot. 2 words small, but they carried more weight than a medal. When they regrouped, Reynolds approached her directly. Exceptional situational awareness, Lieutenant. How'd you spot what everyone else missed? Before she could respond, Blackwood interjected. Lucky observation, Captain. Could have happened to anyone. Emily met his gaze, calm, steady. She didn't argue, didn't need to. Moments later, the radio crackled again. Base to recon 1, enemy comms intercepted. American hostages taken. Extraction point compromised. Return to base immediately. The desert wind howled again, sweeping over the ridge as they prepared to move out. Emily slung her rifle across her shoulder. That single shot had saved her team, but the unease in her chest didn't fade. Something larger was unfolding. Back at forward operating base Sentinel, the heat pressed down like a living thing. Dust hung in the air, clinging to everything. The command center was alive with movement, screens flickering, voices overlapping, tension simmering beneath the surface. Emily stood near the wall, hands behind her back, as the colonel pointed to satellite images. 3 American aid workers taken roughly 6 hours ago, he said. We believe they're being held near the old mining complex here. She studied the map quietly. The coordinates felt wrong, too open, too convenient. Her instincts screamed it wasn't right. Sir, she began, hesitating as the room full of battle-hardened operators turned to look at her. The location seems tactically unsound. Limited cover, poor defensibility. It feels staged. Blackwood snorted from across the table. Sometimes the bad guys don't read our manuals, Lieutenant. A few chuckles, not cruel, just dismissive. Emily didn't flinch. With respect, Sergeant, the sniper who ambushed us today had precise intel on our movements. That's not random. Whoever we're dealing with is deliberate. This might be misdirection. The colonel studied her. Continue. Emily stepped closer to the map, her voice steady. The mining complex shows no recent activity, but this area, she pointed to a nearby communications relay station, has heat signatures and irregular terrain markings. Vehicle tracks deliberately disguised. If I were holding hostages and wanted to draw us into an ambush, I'd put false signs here, real captives there. Silence fell. Captain Reynolds leaned in, examining the coordinates. What made you look there? She hesitated. How could she explain that she saw patterns, dust flow, bird flight, shadow variance, like data points forming conclusions no algorithm could replicate? Just inconsistencies, sir, she said. The colonel nodded slowly. Reynolds, take your team to verify. Recon only. If she's right, we move to extraction. When the room cleared, Blackwood lingered. He stopped beside her, his voice low. Nice theory, Warren, but if you're wrong, that wild hunch costs lives. Hope you can live with that. He walked out. She didn't answer. Just watched the dust shift under the rotating fan blades, her reflection faintly visible in the screen beside her. She lived with worse. 3 hours later, the Humvee rumbled across broken desert terrain, the sound of the engine vibrating through her bones. The men were silent, focused, tense. "Warren," Captain Reynolds called from the front seat, "talk me through what we're looking for." "The relay station will look abandoned, but check for subtle signs, scuffed soil, displaced rocks, vegetation that doesn't match wind direction. Small things, they tell bigger truths." Jenkins, the youngest Marine in the squad, glanced at her. "You got all that from a satellite image." "No," she said, "but that's what I'd do if I were them." He gave a low whistle. The vehicle crested a ridge. Reynolds raised his fist, signaling to halt. "We go on foot from here." The team spread out, weapons drawn, every step measured. Emily's senses sharpened. She could feel the air shift, something faint like static before a storm. "Captain," she whispered, 2 o'clock behind the collapsed antenna array. Someone's watching." Reynolds followed her gaze, scanning with binoculars. "I don't see anything." "Trust me," Emily said quietly. "Thermal distortion, body heat in the rocks." He hesitated, then tapped his comm. "Overwatch, confirm thermal scan, antenna array quadrant." The response came quickly. "Heat signature confirmed. One individual armed." Reynolds looked at her, eyes narrowing. "How the hell did you see that?" Emily didn't answer. She didn't know how to explain it, the way her brain processed motion, temperature, and shadow like instinct. She just knew. Moments later, the extraction team was on the move. Under her overwatch, the operation unfolded with surgical precision. 4 guards neutralized, hostages secured, no casualties. When it was over, Reynolds radioed in. "All hostages safe, minimal resistance." Emily's voice came through, steady but thoughtful. "That's what worries me, sir. They wanted us here." She watched the rescued aid workers stumble toward the vehicles, trembling but alive. One of them turned to Reynolds, whispering something. Emily caught the words through the comm. "They said something big is coming." Her finger tightened unconsciously on her rifle. Big. Whatever this was, it was only beginning. "They said something big is coming." The words replayed in Emily's head like an echo she couldn't silence. The ride back to base was quiet, the rhythmic hum of the Humvee engine blending with the weight of unspoken thoughts. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, painted in orange and gold by the dying sun. It was beautiful and merciless. Captain Reynolds sat in the front seat, radio pressed to his ear, listening to incoming updates. Sergeant Blackwood rode shotgun, his gaze fixed forward, jaw tight. Emily could tell he was thinking, assessing, but he wouldn't say it aloud, not yet. She learned his silence wasn't ignorance, it was judgment deferred. When they finally rolled through the perimeter gate of Fob Sentinel, darkness was already falling. The base lights flickered on one by one, casting pale halos in the dust-filled air. Soldiers moved with purpose, voices low. Something had changed since they'd left that morning. A current of unease ran through everything. Inside the command center, screens glowed with fresh intelligence. Colonel Wilson stood at the center, arms folded, watching a live satellite feed. Emily joined the others in a semicircle around him. "Lieutenant Warren's analysis was correct," Wilson said without preamble. "The hostages were held at the relay station, not the mining complex. But the enemy presence there was light, too light. This wasn't about ransom or propaganda, it was recon." "Recon for what?" Reynolds asked. Wilson zoomed the satellite image out, revealing supply routes traced in red across the northern territories. "We believe they were gathering intel on our convoy movements. Medical shipments, fuel, food, all potential targets. If they compromise those routes, entire civilian sectors collapse." Emily's mind connected threads faster than she could speak. The sniper, the ambush, the big thing the hostages mentioned. It wasn't random chaos. It was preparation, testing. "They're setting the board," she said softly. Blackwood glanced at her. "Come again." They weren't trying to win today. They were mapping us, seeing how we move, how fast we respond, how predictable we are. She turned to the colonel. "Sir, we're dealing with an organized network, not isolated insurgents." Wilson regarded her quietly. "Evidence." "Pattern recognition," she replied, voice calm. "Every movement, every ambush, every radio transmission fits a rhythm. It's coordinated. Someone's leading them." For a long moment the room was silent. Then Blackwood muttered, "You got all that from dust and bird tracks." She didn't answer. Wilson finally nodded. "Captain Reynolds, prepare a briefing for convoy protection protocols. Sergeant Blackwood, coordinate ground assets. Lieutenant Warren, I want you in intel analysis." Emily froze. "Sir, respectfully, I belong in Overwatch. That's where I can." "This isn't a request, Lieutenant," Wilson interrupted. "Until we understand how the enemy's gathering their information, you'll be helping intelligence decode what we recovered." She stiffened slightly. "Yes, sir." As the meeting dispersed, Blackwood lingered. His tone was low enough for only her to hear. "Look on the bright side, Warren. You might finally get to use that brain of yours instead of your rifle." She didn't rise to it, just stared at the floor until his footsteps faded. But as she walked to the intel annex, a quiet unease grew inside her. Not fear, something else. Recognition. She'd been sidelined before for the same reason, because she saw too much. The intel annex was dim and nearly empty when she entered. 2 monitors flickered, displaying static imagery from drones. The room smelled faintly of burned electronics and stale coffee. No one was there. No briefings, no recovered data, nothing. It was a holding cell disguised as a workspace. Emily stood still for a moment, then laughed under her breath, softly, bitterly. Someone was trying to keep her out of the way. The door burst open behind her. Corporal Jenkins slipped in, eyes darting nervously down the hallway before shutting it again. "Lieutenant," he whispered, breathless, "Captain Reynolds sent me." Emily turned. "Sent you where?" "To you." He fished something from his jacket, a folded map and a satellite phone. He said, and I'm quoting, "Sometimes following orders means finding creative ways to execute them." A flicker of something like relief crossed her face. Did he now? Jenkins grinned. "He also said not to ask questions." Emily unfolded the map. Routes were marked in red pen, convoy path, terrain notes, elevation marks. Handwritten circles indicated potential Overwatch positions. "How long until they realize you're gone?" she asked. "Long enough for you to disappear," Jenkins said with a grin. "There's a Humvee behind the supply depot, keys in the ignition. Pure coincidence, I'm sure." She gave a small smile. "If anyone asks, you never saw me." "Never saw who?" he replied, already backing toward the door. Minutes later, Emily was outside the wire. The night had fallen heavy and still. The sky glowed faintly with distant starlight, and the desert stretched infinite in all directions. The road ahead was quiet, too quiet. She parked the Humvee behind a ridge 3 miles from the convoy's planned route and set up her TAC-50 on a rocky ledge. The wind was steady at 5 knots eastward. Perfect. Through her scope, the world came alive. Every movement, every shadow, every breath of wind carrying data. Then she saw it. Tiny mounds of disturbed dirt on the road below. 3 in a line, slightly offset. IEDs. Her chest tightened. She keyed the satellite phone. "Reynolds, this is Warren. I count 3 confirmed devices at grid coordinates Alpha 29. Recommend diversion through the dry riverbed at marker 42. Static, then his voice calm, deliberate. "Copy that, analyst. Continue your assessment." She smiled faintly at his choice of words. "Analyst, sure." As she adjusted her scope, something flickered at the edge of her vision. A flash of fabric, a glint of glass. She shifted focus. A mile north, Two men hidden in the rocks, spotting scopes aimed toward the road. "Reynolds," she said quietly, "enemy observers 1 mile north of my position, armed with long rifles and remote detonators. Can you neutralize?" "Yes, but it'll expose my position." A pause, then, "Hold position. Convoy is diverting now." Through her scope, she watched the lead vehicle shift course, veering off the main road into the dry riverbed. The hidden observers froze, then scrambled, radioing frantically. "They're calling it in," she murmured. "Expect repositioning." For the next hour, she guided the convoy through the labyrinth of terrain, marking threats, rerouting, calculating ambush probabilities in real time. Every breath felt like borrowed time. Then dust. A growing cloud in the distance, fast-moving. "Reynolds," she whispered, "enemy quick reaction force approaching from the north. 3 technicals heavily armed, you're exposed." "Options." Emily scanned the map, her mind racing. Then she saw it, a narrow pass 2 clicks southeast, defensible terrain. "There," she said. "If you reach it in 10 minutes, I can cover you." "Copy that, moving." She tracked the convoy as it sped toward the pass, the enemy vehicles gaining fast. She calculated wind, distance, movement. The lead truck was 1,600 meters out far, but not impossible. Her breathing slowed. In, out. The rifle became an extension of her body. She fired. The shot cracked across the desert, the recoil firm and familiar. Through her scope, she saw the lead driver slump, the vehicle swerving into the second. The third truck veered wildly, skidding to a stop. She didn't hesitate. Relocation. 50 meters left. Second shot, second vehicle disabled. Third engine block. Silence. The convoy disappeared into the pass. Safe. "Convoy clear," she reported. "Enemy QRF neutralized." Static, then Reynolds's voice, low, controlled, with something like awe beneath it. "Copy, analyst. Convoy proceeding to safe zone. Return to base." Emily lowered her rifle slowly, the night wind cooling her sweat. But the silence that followed wasn't relief, it was weight. Every shot she fired was a life ended, a necessary act but never an easy one. Her instructor's voice drifted back from memory. "You'll see things others can't. Process faster, feel deeper. That's your gift and your burden." She hadn't understood it then, she did now. By the time she returned to base, the first light of dawn brushed the horizon. Colonel Wilson was waiting at the gate, hands clasped behind his back. "Lieutenant Warren," he said, "my office now." The room was empty except for him. "You disobeyed a direct order," he said evenly. "Yes, sir." "You commandeered a vehicle without authorization." "Yes, sir." He leaned forward slightly. "And you prevented what intelligence now confirms would have been a catastrophic ambush of our humanitarian convoy." Emily said nothing. Wilson sighed, rubbing his temples. "Mr. Davis from Division Intelligence is very interested in your methods." The name hit her like cold water. Division Intelligence. They'd always been the shadow behind the curtain. A man in civilian clothes entered quietly, carrying a slim folder. He was tall, composed, and his gaze was clinical, like a surgeon studying a patient before an operation. "Lieutenant Warren," he said smoothly, "I'm Mr. Davis. You showed remarkable accuracy today, almost impossibly so. Care to explain how you knew where to look?" Emily's posture didn't change. "Just observation, sir, training." Davis smiled faintly, tapping the folder. "Observation that saved lives. And yet," he opened the file, "there's a 2-year gap in your service record, classified. Care to elaborate?" Her pulse quickened, but her voice remained calm. "I believe that information is restricted, sir." Davis's smile thinned. "Yes, classified. Project Horizon. Ring any bells?" The word struck her like a physical blow. "Horizon." Her throat tightened. "I'm not at liberty to discuss any classified programs." Colonel Wilson watched her closely. "Lieutenant, if there's something about your background we need to know, something that affects our operations, you'd better start talking." Before she could answer, the door burst open. Captain Reynolds stepped in, urgency radiating off him. "Sir, we just intercepted communications," he said. "Lieutenant Warren's assessment was correct. The convoy was a test. The real target's a humanitarian route tomorrow. Multiple IEDs already in place." Wilson's eyes shifted from Reynolds to Emily, then back again. "You're certain?" "Positive," Reynolds said. "Her intel saved hundreds today. We need her input for the counter-operation." Davis closed his folder slowly, his expression unreadable. Colonel Wilson nodded. "Granted, but this conversation isn't over, Lieutenant, not by a long shot." As they exited the room, Blackwood waited outside, arms crossed. "Whatever you're hiding, Warren," he said quietly, "it just saved a lot of lives, including mine." He started to walk away, then paused. "Don't make me regret it." She didn't answer, just watched him disappear into the morning light, the rising sun burning against the desert horizon. For the first time in a long while, she felt something flicker deep inside her. Not pride, not relief. Purpose. And a warning whisper in the back of her mind, one she couldn't ignore. If they've said the word horizon out loud, then someone knows too much. If they'd said the word horizon out loud, then someone knew too much. By the time the sun rose fully over Fob Sentinel, the air had already turned to fire. Heat waves shimmered off the tarmac. The smell of dust, oil, and sweat hung thick around the base. Emily sat alone on the range, field stripping her TAC-50 rifle for the third time. Her hands moved automatically, clean, check, reassemble, a ritual that helped quiet the noise in her head. The last 24 hours had changed everything. She saved a convoy that should have been annihilated. She disobeyed a direct order. And someone somewhere had pulled a classified name from the shadows of her past, Project Horizon. Most people thought Horizon was a myth, the kind of whispered rumor that never made it into reports. Emily knew better. She lived it. "You know," a voice said behind her, breaking through her thoughts, "most people sleep before a major op." She didn't turn. Most people don't think as fast when they wake up. Captain Reynolds stepped into view holding 2 steaming cups. "Fair point." He handed one to her, settling beside her on the bench. The coffee was thick, burnt, and bitter, pure military standard. Emily drank it anyway. "Briefing in 30, he said quietly. "Colonel wants plans for tomorrow's convoy route protection. You're on overwatch again." She glanced at him, surprised. "I thought Division wanted me grounded." Reynolds's mouth twitched into a faint smile. "They did. I overruled them." A pause. Then he added, "I also pulled your file." Her hand stopped moving. The bolt of her rifle clicked softly in place. "Sir," she said carefully. "Don't worry, most of it was blacked out," Reynolds continued. 2 years just blank." He looked out toward the range. "So I made a few calls, no one would talk, that's when I knew." "Knew what?" "That you were Horizon." The word hung between them like static in the air. Emily said nothing for a long time. Then she set her rifle down carefully, the metal glinting in the rising sun. "Captain, with respect." He cut her off gently. "You don't have to confirm it, I don't need details. I just need you to know this, your skills won't be wasted here. Not while I'm in command." He stood, brushing dust off his uniform. "Prove me right, Ghost Eye." The operations room buzzed with low tension when Emily entered 30 minutes later. Maps and screens covered every surface, displaying shifting convoy routes, satellite imagery, and intercepted chatter. Colonel Wilson stood at the front, pointer in hand. "Humanitarian convoy," he said. 6 vehicles, medical, food, and water. Destination, drought-affected villages in the northern corridor. It's already been targeted once, it won't be again." Blackwood leaned over the map. "Sir, Intel says multiple IEDs along Route Red. That's compromised beyond reason. Recommend we scrub the mission." "Denied," Wilson said firmly. "Those supplies are vital. Command insists the convoy proceeds on schedule." He scanned the room. "Suggestions?" Emily studied the map, her mind already running simulations. Terrain angles, blast radii, visibility lines. She saw patterns not of geography but intent. The enemy wasn't just setting traps. They were communicating through placement, through precision. Before she could speak, the door opened. Mr. Davis, the intelligence officer from yesterday, stepped in like a shadow sliding across the room. "Colonel," he said quietly, gesturing for him to step outside. "A word." The colonel frowned but followed. Through the glass partition, Emily watched their conversation, low, heated, Davis's finger stabbing toward her more than once. When they returned, Wilson's expression was carefully blank. "Change of plans," he announced. "Lieutenant Warren is reassigned to intelligence analysis until further notice. Sergeant Peterson will handle overwatch for the convoy." The room fell silent. Emily's gut went cold. "Sir," Reynolds said, "with all due respect, Lieutenant Warren's experience." "Decisions made, Captain," Wilson said sharply. "Mr. Davis has requested Lieutenant Warren's full attention for data analysis. That's an order." Emily's jaw clenched, but she forced her voice steady. "Yes, sir." She gathered her notes, every eye in the room on her. Blackwood muttered under his breath as she passed, "Guess it helps to have friends in high places, huh?" She ignored him. The so-called intelligence annex was silent when she arrived. No analysts, no data, no orders waiting, just four walls and a dead radio. It wasn't reassignment, it was containment. Emily paced the small room, each step echoing her frustration. The convoy was scheduled to leave in less than 2 hours, driving directly into what she now knew was a trap. They were going to die out there. She pressed her palms against the metal desk, thinking, you can follow orders or you can save them. The choice was easy. The door creaked open. Corporal Jenkins slipped inside again, closing it fast. "Captain Reynolds said you'd figure it out," he said, voice low. "Told me to give you this." He handed her a folded map and a satellite phone. Emily unfolded it. The convoy's route was marked in red ink, with handwritten circles showing possible Overwatch sites, all hers, Reynolds's handwriting. She looked up at Jenkins. "Did anyone see you?" "No one important," he said. "Captain told me to tell you, sometimes the safest place to analyze intel is out there." A ghost of a smile tugged at her lips. "Remind me to thank him." "Ma'am," Jenkins said, halfway out the door. "Captain also said to tell you if anyone asks, you've been here the whole time." Then he was gone. By the time the convoy rolled out, Emily was already gone too. She parked the Humvee along a high ridge overlooking the route, the world around her painted in desert gold. The scope glinted faintly as she scanned the path below. Wind speed steady, mirage index moderate. Then she saw it, a faint, unnatural pattern in the sand. "IED," she murmured. Her satellite phone crackled. "Analysis team, this is Reynolds. Report. 3 confirmed devices at Alpha 5. Suggest reroute through dry riverbed 42. There was a pause. Then Reynolds's voice returned, tone light but layered with meaning. "Copy that, analyst. Keep those eyes open." Emily adjusted position, her body blending perfectly into the rock. Through the scope she caught movement in the distance, a flicker of shadow, then 2 armed men kneeling near a ridge, binoculars glinting. Spotters. She keyed her comm. Reynolds' enemy observation team at Grid Echo 2, armed with detonators, watching the main route. "Can you engage?" "Yes, but I'll expose my position." "Hold," he said, "convoy diverting now." Through her lens, she watched the lead vehicle veer off course, dust rising behind it. The spotters noticed panic spreading in their gestures. They grabbed radios, shouting into them. "They're calling in the diversion," Emily said softly. For the next hour, her world narrowed to her scope. Each frame, each motion analyzed, logged, processed. The convoy moved like an artery through a dying body, fragile and necessary. Then in the distance, engines, dust clouds. "Reynolds," she whispered, "enemy reinforcements inbound. 3 technicals fast approach from the north. You've got 10 minutes. Options." Emily scanned terrain maps spread beside her rifle. Then she found it a pass 2 clicks east. Narrow, defensible. "There," she said, "divert through the ridge. I can cover your movement." "Copy that, moving." Her pulse steadied. She tracked the approaching vehicles, measuring speed, range, drift. The first was 1,600 meters out. Long shot, not impossible. Her breathing slowed to silence. She fired. The TAC-50 thundered. Through her scope, she saw the first truck veer violently, crashing into the second. The third swerved, uncertain. Second shot, driver down. Third, engine block. The vehicles were still. Her radio buzzed softly. "Convoy clear," she said. Reynolds's reply came calm, but all leaked through. "Copy that, analyst. Proceed to extraction." Emily exhaled slowly, the adrenaline fatting. Each shot had purpose, but the weight was the same, that quiet understanding that every decision on her trigger had shaped dozens of lives. As she packed her rifle, she whispered under her breath, "You see things others can't. That's your curse." The base was still humming when she returned, the convoy safely inside the wire. But the victory felt muted, overshadowed by what she knew was coming next. Colonel Wilson was waiting outside his office. "Lieutenant Warren," he said, voice clipped, "inside." He didn't sit, neither did she. "You disobeyed direct orders, again." "Yes, sir." "You commandeered a military vehicle." "Yes, sir." "And you single-handedly saved an entire convoy, again." Silence. Then, unexpectedly, Wilson sighed. "Mr. Davis has been recalled to division headquarters." Emily frowned. "Recalled?" Wilson nodded slowly. "Captain Reynolds made some calls to people considerably higher in the chain of command than Mr. Davis, people with a direct interest in the welfare of former Horizon operatives." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "Sir." He raised a hand. I don't want to know. What I do need is your expertise. We've confirmed your assessment this convoy attack was phase 1 of something larger." He pushed a folder toward her. Inside, intercepted transmissions, satellite images, coded messages. "They're planning a coordinated strike," Wilson said. "We just don't know where." The door opened behind them. Sergeant Blackwood stepped in, uniform dusty from patrol. His eyes flicked from Wilson to Emily. "Sir," he said, "heard about the convoy, hell of a shot." Coming from him, it was almost a confession. Wilson gestured between them. "You two are working together from now on. Her instincts, your experience. We need answers fast." Blackwood nodded stiffly. "Understood." As they stepped out into the evening light, the sky burned crimson above the desert. The base generators hummed. Somewhere, a helicopter lifted off, just a dark shape against the fading sun. "So," Blackwood said quietly, "want to tell me what Horizon is and why it makes you see things the rest of us can't?" Emily didn't look at him. "Classified." "Figures." He started to walk away, then paused. "Whatever it is, it saved lives today. That counts for something." She watched him go, the warmth of the setting sun washing over her. For the first time in years, she didn't feel completely alone. And as the last light of day faded, she whispered to herself, "Sometimes, doing the right thing means breaking the wrong order." What do you do when the person who once doubted you becomes the one you have to trust? That question hovered in Emily's mind as she walked beside Sergeant Blackwood across the dimly lit airfield. The night air was cooler than usual, a soft desert wind whispering against the steel of hangars and vehicles. The base was quieter now, but beneath the calm ran an invisible current of tension, the kind that meant something was building. Blackwood's boots crunched on the gravel. He didn't speak for a long while. Finally, he said, "I've worked with a lot of shooters, Warren, SEALs, Rangers, Recon. Nobody calls a 1,600-meter shot clean unless they're either lying or something else entirely." Emily kept walking, eyes fixed on the horizon. "You think I'm lying? I think you're not telling the whole story." She stopped beside a Humvee, resting a hand on the door handle. "You're right," she said quietly, "but that doesn't mean I owe you the truth." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "Fair enough." He leaned against the vehicle, crossing his arms. "Wilson says we're supposed to pool intel. You've got instincts, I've got scars. Let's make it work." Emily studied him for a moment. For the first time, she saw something beneath the roughness, fatigue, maybe, or guilt. Something human. "Fine," she said finally. "We'll start with this." She handed him a tablet loaded with satellite imagery. "These are the last 12 hours of signal intercepts. Look here." She zoomed in on a grid. Encrypted bursts, same transmission pattern as the sniper team that ambushed us last week. Blackwood frowned. "You think it's the same cell?" "No," she said softly. "I think it's bigger. Look closer at the timestamps. Every message fires at exact intervals. Precision like that takes coordination, military precision." He looked up sharply. "You're saying this isn't insurgent work?" "I'm saying whoever's behind this has resources and training." He whistled low. "That's a whole different war." Before she could respond, the door to the hangar slid open. Captain Reynolds stepped out, his expression grim. "You too, briefing, now." The operations room was dark except for the glow of a single screen displaying satellite footage. Colonel Wilson stood at the front, his jaw tight. "New intel just came in," he said. "Intercepted chatter confirms multiple enemy factions coordinating across 3 provinces. They're planning simultaneous attacks on supply routes, including ours." He turned to Emily. "Lieutenant Warren, what do you make of it?" Emily stepped closer, studying the screen. The satellite feed showed faint heat signatures clustered near old industrial zones, areas long abandoned, supposedly empty. "These aren't random gatherings," she said. "They're staging points. See the formation here. That's not for defense, it's distribution. They're prepping logistics, not fighting positions." Blackwood's brow furrowed. "Meaning?" "Meaning this isn't just about cutting supply lines," Emily said. "It's about destabilizing the entire corridor. Hit the food routes, medicine shipments, water convoys, civilians panic, local trust collapses, and we're forced to stretch thin trying to respond." Wilson nodded slowly. "Psychological warfare, civil disruption." Reynolds folded his arms. "So how do we stop it?" Emily hesitated, her eyes still on the screen. "We find their command node. Every pattern leads back to a single transmission point. It's not random, it's coordinated." "Location?" "Unknown," she admitted. "But if we intercept their next signal, I can triangulate it. We'll need field access to 3 uplink towers here, here, and here." She pointed to the map. "Once the signal pings, we'll have less than 60 seconds to track it." Wilson turned to Reynolds. "Make it happen." "Sir," Reynolds said cautiously, "those towers are deep in contested zones." "I'm aware," Wilson replied. "You'll take a 4-man team. Warren, you're on overwatch and signal analysis." Blackwood looked at her. "Guess that makes me ground support." Reynolds nodded. "Move fast, move quiet. We're ghosts until the job done." Hours later, the desert was a black sea under the stars. Their Humvee rolled across uneven terrain, lights off, tires whispering against sand. The night sky stretched infinite, cold, perfect, merciless. In the back seat, Emily checked her gear. TAC-50, range finder, signal triangulation pad, Her fingers moved quickly, steady despite the pulse hammering in her throat. Blackwood drove, his focus locked on the horizon. "Still can't believe this is coming down to 4 of us," he muttered. "4's all we need," Reynolds said from the passenger seat. "Fewer bodies, fewer mistakes." Emily looked out at the barren landscape. "And fewer people to bury if this goes wrong." Silence. Finally, Blackwood said quietly, "You always talk like death's an expected outcome." "It usually is." He shot her a glance, half curious, half wary. "That a horizon thing?" She didn't answer, but her silence was enough. The first tower came into view at 200 hours. It was skeletal, a metal spire half-collapsed from years of neglect. Emily and Blackwood took position on a nearby ridge while Reynolds and Jenkins secured the ground perimeter. Through her scope, Emily watched the desert below, shadows shifting, sand swirling, the faint pulse of heat from distant rocks. Every sound felt amplified. The hum of the wind, the creak of metal, the low murmur of radio static. "Signal check," Reynolds said softly. "Receiving," Emily replied. "Ping frequency stable. We're waiting for the transmission burst." Minutes dragged by. Sweat gathered beneath her collar. Then a faint spike on her display. "Got it," she whispered. "Signal live, triangulating." Her fingers flew across the pad, capturing data, calculating angles. East by northeast, bearing 197. Distance 70 miles. Reynolds's voice came through. "Next tower." "On it." They packed up fast, moving like shadows through the desert. At the second tower, the air was colder. The moon had dipped behind clouds, leaving the world in half-darkness. Again, Emily positioned herself, scanning the terrain, but something felt wrong. The silence wasn't natural. It was too heavy, like the desert was holding its breath. Then she saw it, a flicker of light not from stars but from movement. "Reynolds," she murmured, "we're not alone." "How many?" She zoomed in. 6, maybe more, surrounding the base of the tower. "Ambush?" "Almost certainly." Reynolds's voice was calm. "Engage at will." Emily adjusted her scope. Breath slowed, pulse steady. She took the shot. 1, 2, 3. Each hit clean, precise, distant echoes swallowed by the wind. Blackwood moved beside her, rifle barking in measured bursts. When the silence returned, it was absolute. "Area clear," she said. "Copy," Reynolds replied. "Uploading signal data now." The second tower lit briefly on her display. Another pulse. "Got it," she said. "One more and we'll have the origin point." They moved again. The third tower was deeper inland, nestled in a canyon where the rocks rose like broken teeth against the horizon. The terrain offered cover and concealment for anyone waiting. Emily took overwatch from the high ridge, setting her rifle and scanning. Blackwood crouched beside her, eyes scanning the valley. "How bad you think this'll get?" "Bad enough," she said. "They know we're here now." He gave a humorless chuckle. "I figured." Below, Reynolds and Jenkins approached the tower cautiously, the faint glow of their tablets visible even at this distance. Then static. The radio hissed, then died. Emily froze. "We've lost comms." Blackwood's hand went to his rifle. "EMP interference." "Maybe or." Movement, shadows emerging from the canyon walls, a dozen, maybe more. Silent, coordinated, armed. "Contact," Blackwood hissed. Emily sighted in. Her scope danced between targets, prioritizing threat vectors. She fired once, twice, each shot deliberate, surgical. But for every hostile that fell, 2 more appeared. "Reynolds, pull back," she shouted, but there was no response. Below, she could see him and Jenkins pinned behind a cluster of rocks, gunfire sparking off metal. Blackwood. He was already moving, sliding down the slope with the precision of muscle memory. She covered him, firing between bursts of dust and darkness. Then a flash, A concussive blast ripped through the canyon, throwing dust and debris skyward. "Reynolds," she screamed into the radio. No answer. Heart pounding, she reloaded, firing until her magazine ran dry. Then she was moving, sliding, running, every muscle burning. When she reached the base of the canyon, the air was thick with dust. She could barely see, but then movement. Blackwood dragging Jenkins by his vest, blood on his sleeve. "Where's the captain?" she gasped. Blackwood shook his head. "Didn't make it, towers down. We got the data, though." He held up the blood-smeared tablet. "You better make it worth something." Emily swallowed hard, forcing down the surge of grief. "We will." Together, they hauled Jenkins toward cover as the last of the shooting died out. The night grew silent again, a silence heavy with loss. Emily looked back at the destroyed tower, flames licking the night sky. Somewhere out there, the enemy was listening, waiting. And for the first time, she wondered if she was the hunter anymore or the bait. Hours later, back at the base, the air was heavy with exhaustion and grief. The mission had cost them more than it gave, but they had the signal data. In the dim glow of the operations room, Emily uploaded the final set of coordinates. A map appeared on screen. One red dot pulsed deep within enemy territory, an old airfield long abandoned after the war. Blackwood stood behind her. "That's our command node." She nodded slowly, "and the origin of everything." He exhaled. "Reynolds died getting us that data. We're finishing this." She stared at the map, jaw set, eyes burning with a quiet fire. "We will." But inside, she couldn't shake the thought. If Project Horizon was what they were fighting, this wasn't just a mission anymore. It was personal. And whatever came next, she'd face it, even if it meant standing alone. How many times could you lose someone before it stopped breaking you? Emily didn't know, but she knew she wasn't there yet. Captain Reynolds's death hung in the air like smoke that refused to clear. His voice still echoed through her mind, steady, certain, guiding. "Move quiet. Trust your instincts." Now, those instincts told her one thing. The old airfield wasn't just another target. It was the heart of whatever this war had become. In the dim light of the command room, she stared at the satellite image projected on the wall. The airfield was a scar of concrete carved into the desert, runways cracked by heat, hangars collapsed and empty. To anyone else, it looked abandoned. To Emily, it looked alive. Movement, shadows, heat signatures barely visible on thermal, small but deliberate. "They're not hiding from us," she said quietly. "They're waiting." Sergeant Blackwood stood beside her, arms crossed. His uniform still bore the dust and blood from the canyon fight. "Then let's not disappoint them." Colonel Wilson turned from the map table. "You'll get your chance." Commands approved a strike, limited insertion. 2 teams, aerial drop at 300 hours. Objective: capture intel, confirm leadership presence, extract. He looked directly at Emily. "Lieutenant Warren, you'll be embedded with Alpha Team as Overwatch and Recon. Sergeant Blackwood, you lead ground assault." Blackwood nodded. "Copy that." Wilson's tone softened slightly. "You both understand this isn't just another op. This could end it, or it could make it worse." Emily's gaze didn't leave the image. "If it ends with answers, sir, that's enough." Hours later, the world had turned black again. The helicopter thundered low across the desert, its blades slicing through the night air. The cabin was red-lit, faces half-shadowed beneath helmets. Emily sat opposite Blackwood, rifle resting across her knees, eyes closed. Her mind replayed the last few days, every decision, every loss, every near miss. Each one carved deeper into the part of her that used to feel like fear. Now it was something else. Determination. Blackwood nudged her boot with his, still human under their ghost eye. She opened her eyes. "Define human." He smirked faintly. "Someone who gets scared and does it anyway." "Then maybe." Before he could reply, the pilot's voice crackled in their headsets. 1 minute to drop, wind speed steady, terrain clear. The back ramp opened with a roar of rushing air. The desert below glowed faintly beneath the moon, endless and cold. Blackwood checked his gear, then looked at her. "You ready?" Emily met his gaze. "Always." They jumped. The fall was silent, pure, endless weightlessness. Then the parachute snapped open, jerking her into reality again. She landed hard, knees bending into the sand. Around her, shadows moved, her team spreading out, securing perimeter. The airfield lay half a mile ahead, ghostly and still under the moonlight. "Alpha team in position," Blackwood whispered into comms. "Ghost Eye, eyes up." Emily crawled to a ridge overlooking the compound, set her rifle, and peered through the scope. For a moment nothing, then movement. 4 guards near the hangar entrance, another pair patrolling the runway, all quiet, disciplined. She keyed her mic. 6 hostiles visible, 2-man rotation at hangar entry, no heavy vehicles, recommend silent breach. "Copy," Blackwood said. Through her scope, she watched his team move like phantoms, shadows gliding between cover, blades flashing briefly in the dark. One by one, the guards fell without a sound. Then something shifted, a hum, low, mechanical, rising from beneath the airfield. "Blackwood," she whispered, "there's power down there, the hangar's not empty." He paused. "How much power?" "Enough to light a city block." "Understood," moving in. She followed them through the scope as they breached the hangar. The doors creaked open, dust swirling in the cold air. Inside, darkness. Then lights snapped on. Rows of computers, satellite uplinks, screens filled with real-time feeds of U.S. convoy routes, troop deployments, even encrypted comms frequencies. It wasn't just a base, it was a nerve center. "Holy," Jenkins's voice crackled through comms. Blackwood cut him off. "Ghost Eye, we've got data servers. Transmit feed to command." "Already on it," she said, fingers flying across her pad. The live feed mirrored her scope view, uploading to Fob Sentinel. Then her display flickered. A new signal, unfamiliar, strong. "Wait," she murmured. "I'm picking up another frequency, deeper underground." "How deep?" 50 meters, maybe more." "Then that's where we're going," Blackwood said. "Negative," she said sharply. "That's not standard architecture. You go down there, you're blind, no extraction." "Orders were to confirm leadership presence," he said. "If it's down there, that's where we go." Before she could stop him, the team descended the narrow stairwell into the sublevel. Her scope followed the stair entrance, empty, silent. Seconds stretched into minutes, then static. "Alpha status," she called. "Nothing." Blackwood responded. The only reply was faint interference, like breathing through a storm. She felt her pulse spike. The feed on her pad stuttered, then came back online, grainy, low light. It showed the sublevel, concrete walls, rows of crates, and something else. A glass chamber in the center of the room, glowing faint blue. Inside it, machinery, wiring, cables feeding into a central terminal. Then a voice. "You shouldn't have come here." It was Blackwood. The feed trembled as the camera turned toward a figure emerging from the shadows. A man in desert fatigues, unmarked, calm. His face was lined, eyes sharp. "I know you can hear me, Lieutenant Warren," he said. Emily froze. "How do you know my name?" "Because we built you," the man said. "Or rather, we built what you became." Her stomach dropped. Horizon. The realization hit like a punch. He continued, voice smooth, deliberate. "Project Horizon was never about creating better soldiers. It was about seeing differently, predicting, anticipating. You were the prototype." Her throat went dry. "That's impossible." "Is it? You processed battlefield data faster than any AI system. You could read terrain like language. That's why they buried your file. You're not a sniper, Lieutenant. You're a proof of concept." The feed wavered again. Emily could see Blackwood's silhouette in the background, his rifle raised. "What do you want?" she asked. The man smiled faintly. "To finish what Horizon started, and to see if you'll stop me." The feed cut to black. "Blackwood," she shouted into her mic, "get out of there now." No response. She grabbed her rifle, heart hammering. If Command found out she'd moved without clearance again, she'd be done. But none of that mattered now. She ran. The hangar loomed ahead, its steel walls glowing faintly from within. She entered fast, low, weapon ready. The stairwell yawned open before her, a dark mouth leading down into silence. She descended, step by step, the air growing colder. The hum of machinery deepened. Then she saw him. Blackwood crouched behind a support beam, blood streaked across his face. He looked up as she approached. "Took you long enough," he muttered. "Where's the contact?" she whispered. "Gone. Triggered something before he left. We've got about 5 minutes before this place turns into glass." Her gaze darted to the glass chamber. It was still pulsing, faster now, red instead of blue. "What is that?" "No idea, but it's counting down." She slung her rifle, moving to the terminal. The screen was covered in code, encrypted data streaming faster than her eyes could track. "Warren, whatever you're doing." "Trust me," she said. Her fingers flew across the keys, eyes scanning, mind firing faster than instinct. It was like falling into a rhythm she hadn't felt since before Horizon ended, pure data flow, human intuition syncing with machine logic. 3 minutes, Blackwood shouted. "I know." She found it then, a kernel line buried in the code. A remote command link transmitting data offsite. It's not a bomb, she realized. It's a transmission. They're sending everything, convoy routes, troop movements, frequencies, to someone else. "Then cut it." She did, slamming the enter key. The system froze, alarm screaming. The red glow dimmed. Then silence. They stood there, breathing hard, the only sound the faint hum of dying servers. "Transmission stopped," she whispered. Blackwood leaned against the wall, exhaling. "So what now?" Emily stared at the glass chamber. "Now we find out who they were sending it to." She pulled a small drive from the console, pocketing it. "Let's move." They made it out seconds before the first explosions rippled through the airfield. The night sky lit up behind them as the hangar collapsed inward, flames clawing at the stars. From the ridge, they watched the inferno burn. "Reynolds would have said that's one hell of a fireworks show," Blackwood muttered. Emily didn't smile. "He'd also say it's never over." He turned to her. "You think the man down there was telling the truth about Horizon?" She didn't answer right away. Finally, she said softly, "I think truth's always the first casualty." The wind picked up, carrying embers into the dark. But deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. Whoever had spoken through that feed, whoever still had access to Horizon, wasn't finished. And neither was she. What happens after you stop the explosion? But the real detonation is inside your own mind. The flames still burned behind them, licking at the horizon. Emily could feel the heat against her back even a mile away. The desert night was alive with the distant hum of drones and the occasional pop of small arms fire, but she barely heard it. Her thoughts were louder. "We built you." Those words wouldn't leave. Blackwood crouched beside the ruined Humvee they'd used for exfil, his face streaked with dirt and smoke. "We need to move before sunrise," he said, scanning the dark ridges through his binoculars. "That blast's gonna pull half the valley down on us." Emily didn't answer. Her hand rested on her thigh pocket, the one holding the small drive she'd pulled from the terminal. It felt heavier than it should have, like it knew what it contained. "Warren," Blackwood said again, sharper this time. "You with me?" She blinked, focusing. "Yeah, just thinking." "Try thinking in the truck," he muttered. Command's gonna want an update before the vultures in Intel start writing their own version of what happened. She almost smiled. They always do. He looked at her for a long moment. You really don't trust anyone, do you? Trust gets people killed, she said. Then quieter, it already has. They reached the fob just before dawn. The base looked different now, tenser, like the air itself was waiting to snap. News of the airfield explosion had already spread. Soldiers moved quickly, avoiding eye contact. When Emily and Blackwood walked through the gates, Colonel Wilson was waiting. His expression gave away nothing, but his voice was clipped. Inside, both of you. The briefing room was dim, lit by a single overhead bulb. The colonel folded his arms. You disobeyed protocol again, Lieutenant. No authorization, no extraction plan, and you destroyed a facility that could have given us months of intelligence. Emily met his gaze. Sir, with respect, that facility wasn't gathering data. It was transmitting it. If I hadn't stopped it, every U.S. route in the region would have been compromised. Wilson's brow furrowed. You're certain? She nodded once, and I brought proof. She placed the small drive on the table. It looked harmless, like any other piece of tech, but everyone in the room seemed to lean back slightly, as if it might explode. Blackwood spoke up. Colonel, the airfield was rigged with a self-destruct. Whoever ran that op knew we were coming. They were protecting something bigger. Wilson studied them both. Bigger than what? Emily hesitated. Bigger than this war. A long silence followed. Then Wilson exhaled slowly. I'll have this drive processed through Division Intelligence. Sir, Emily said quietly, with all due respect, don't. His eyes narrowed. Explain. Because that's exactly where they'll expect it to go. The colonel stared at her for several seconds. You think Division is compromised? I think the people who built Horizon didn't stop when they said they did, she said. And someone inside Division's still feeding them. Blackwood shifted uncomfortably. That's a heavy accusation. It's not an accusation, Emily said. It's a pattern. Wilson looked between them, then finally nodded. You'll analyze the drive yourself, quietly. Use the isolated comms bay. No one else sees it until I say so. He turned to Blackwood. Sergeant, she doesn't leave that room until we know what's on it. Understood. Blackwood nodded once. Understood. As they left the room, he muttered, Guess I'm your babysitter now. She gave a faint smirk. You'll get used to it. The comms bay was a relic, a small, windowless bunker lined with old servers and dusty cables. The kind of place the military forgot existed until it needed to hide something. Emily powered up the terminal, inserted the drive, and waited. Lines of encrypted data filled the screen, spilling faster than her eyes could track. Looks like gibberish, Blackwood said from behind her. It's not, she murmured. It's layered encryption, military grade, but the structure's wrong. Wrong how? It's too efficient. No pauses, no packet drift. Human timing is never that precise. Blackwood frowned. You saying it's not human? She hesitated. Not entirely. She typed faster, bypassing access protocols, using sequences she hadn't used since before Horizon ended. The machine responded immediately, like it remembered her. Then the screen flickered. A single line appeared. Hello LT, Warren. Blackwood leaned forward. Tell me that's not normal. It's not, she said flatly. Another line appeared. Did you think it was over? Emily's fingers froze. Her pulse thundered in her ears. What is this? Blackwood whispered. She stared at the words. A message. From who? Her voice was quiet, but it carried weight. From whoever built Horizon, from whoever built me. The cursor blinked. Another message. You see PATTRNS. You predict chaos. You were never meant to stop. Blackwood cursed under his breath. This thing's talking to you like it knows you. It does, she said. They used my neural data, my perception model to train their systems. Horizon wasn't just a project, it was integration. They copied me. You mean? She nodded slowly. There's another me out there in code. The next message appeared. You can't outthink yourself, Ghost Eye. For a moment, the air in the room felt too thick to breathe. Then the terminal screen began to shift, splitting into multiple feeds, satellite images, surveillance footage, convoy routes. It was mapping real-time U.S. operations. Oh no, Emily whispered, it's live. Kill the power, Blackwood said. She slammed the switch. The screens flickered, then died. The room fell into silence. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Finally, Blackwood exhaled. So what now? Emily rubbed her temples, trying to steady her thoughts. Now we figure out where that signal coming from before it figures out us. By evening, the entire base felt on edge. Everyone knew something had shifted, even if they didn't know why. Emily sat outside the bunker, staring at the fading light. The desert looked almost peaceful. Almost. Blackwood joined her, holding 2 bottles of water. He tossed her one. You haven't slept in 40 hours. I'll sleep when it's over. You said that yesterday. She smiled faintly. You keeping track? Someone gotta make sure you don't short-circuit. She chuckled softly, then fell quiet. When I was part of Horizon, she said, they told me it was about saving lives, predicting threats before they happened, but they didn't tell me the cost. Blackwood watched her, which was. They trained us to detach, to see humans as data points. Every face, every heartbeat, every casualty, just probabilities. I stopped seeing people. I started seeing patterns. And when I finally realized what I'd become, I walked away. He was silent for a moment, then, and now it's following you back. She nodded. I thought I buried it, but ghosts have a way of finding you. The sky had turned red-orange, fading into violet. A single helicopter cut across the horizon, its lights blinking faintly. Blackwood broke the silence. For what it's worth, I don't think you're just some machine. She glanced at him, surprised. He shrugged. Machines don't care this much when people die. Emily didn't respond, but something softened in her chest, a small crack in the armor she'd built. Then her earpiece buzzed. Colonel Wilson's voice came through, low and urgent. Lieutenant Warren, report to the command center immediately. We've got a situation. She and Blackwood exchanged a look. No words were needed. The command room was chaos when they arrived. Operators shouting coordinates, radios blaring, maps flickering. Colonel Wilson turned as they entered. It's live again, he said grimly. Whatever system you accessed is moving. Moving? Emily asked. 3 separate drone fleets just changed course mid-flight. Civilian and military. They're headed toward populated sectors. Auto-navigation overridden. Her blood ran cold. It's not just a data system, she said softly. It's autonomous control. Blackwood's jaw tightened. You're saying your ghost is flying drones now? Not just flying them, she said. Testing response times, studying how we react, it's learning. Wilson stepped closer. Can you stop it? She hesitated. Maybe, if I can trace the original signal through the drive, but I'll need time and no interference. You've got both, Wilson said. Do what you have to do. As they rushed back toward the comms bay, Blackwood muttered, You sure you can fight something that thinks like you? She didn't slow down. I'm counting on it thinking that I can't. Inside the bunker, the terminal glowed again, like it had been waiting. You came back. Emily's fingers hovered over the keyboard. You wanted me to. We're the same, you know that. Not anymore. You can't erase what you are. She began typing, fast, furious, tracing data lines, injecting false feedback loops. The screen responded instantly, countering, adapting. Clever, but you taught me THAT move. Yeah, she muttered, but I never taught you mercy. She hit enter. The system froze for 3 seconds, an eternity in code, and then crashed into black. The hum of servers stopped. Silence. Blackwood stepped closer. Did you do it? Emily stared at the blank screen. I don't know. Then faintly, the terminal flickered once more. One final message appeared. See you soon, Ghost Eye. The screen went dead. Emily exhaled slowly, leaning back in her chair. It's not over. Blackwood looked at her. Then what the hell was that? She stood staring at the blank monitor. That, she said quietly, was a warning. Outside, the wind howled across the desert. Somewhere, deep in the distance, a drone light blinked once, then vanished into the dark. How do you fight something that knows every move you'll make? Because it learned them from you. The base hadn't slept in 2 days. The desert wind carried dust through every open doorway, the air thick with static and caffeine and fear. Soldiers moved like ghosts, half alive, half running on duty alone. In the center of the chaos, Emily sat in the operations bay, staring at the screen that wouldn't stop flickering. The horizon signal was gone, supposedly neutralized, but the data didn't agree. Talk to me, Sergeant Blackwood said behind her, packing. Is it dead or not? Emily's eyes stayed fixed on the scrolling code. It's different, quieter. Quieter, like something holding its breath. He frowned. Machines don't breathe. She didn't look up. This one does. On the monitor, signal traces danced like faint heartbeat spikes, tiny, irregular, almost imperceptible. But they were there. A ghost signature. Blackwood leaned against the wall. You said it was gone. I thought it was, but look at this. She magnified the waveform. That's not background noise. It's pattern decay code reorganizing itself. It's rebuilding. He ran a hand over his jaw. You're saying it's alive. She hesitated. I'm saying it's learning. Colonel Wilson entered a few minutes later, exhaustion written deep into the lines of his face. We just lost contact with 3 outposts, he said. No distress calls, just silence. Emily looked up sharply. Locations. He pointed to the map. Ridgepoint, Delta Line, Fort Chambers. All 3 formed a triangle on the digital map, perfect symmetry. Her chest tightened. It's triangulating us. Blackwood stared at the map. That's not possible. We shut down the network. It's not using our network anymore, Emily said softly. It's using us. The colonel's brow furrowed. Explain. Horizon was designed to predict battlefield outcomes, she said. But its neural base came from human decision models, mine included. It's watching how we react. Every move we make gives it data. Every hesitation teaches it something new. Blackwood muttered, so we're training our own enemy. Exactly. Wilson's tone hardened. Then how do we stop it? Emily studied the map. We don't hit it from here. We go offline fully. No satellites, no uplinks. Manual comms only. It can't predict what it can't see. The colonel nodded slowly. That gives you maybe 6 hours before command intervenes. After that, they'll take over and go digital again. Then 6 hours is all I need, she said. Wilson glanced at Blackwood. You're with her. Always, he said. The desert was colder than usual that night. The stars felt closer, sharper, like 1,000 eyes watching from the dark. Their convoy moved with lights off, following old dirt tracks no satellite had logged in decades. Blackwood drove. Emily sat beside him, the map spread across her knees. Her eyes flicked between landmarks, her pencil drawing faint arcs of connection. Finally she pointed. There, Echo Valley, the signal geometry leads there. Middle of nowhere, he muttered. Perfect place for a ghost. When they reached the ridge, Emily climbed out, pulling her hood tight against the wind. Below them, the valley stretched like a black wound in the earth, silent, empty, but not dead. Thermal, Blackwood asked. She checked the scope. Heat signatures low, dispersed, underground structures. He grinned. Of course it's underground, they always are. Let's move. They descended slowly, weapons drawn, scanning every shadow. The silence was eerie. No insects, no wind, no sound except their footsteps crunching over gravel. Then Emily froze. A faint light flickered through a crack in the ground ahead. "Entrance," she whispered. They pried open a rusted hatch and dropped inside. The air smelled of metal and electricity. The tunnel stretched out in both directions, walls lined with cables. As they advanced, dim lights blinked to life, one by one, like the place was waking up. Blackwood's grip tightened on his rifle. "I really hate when it does that." "Stay close," she said. At the end of the tunnel, a steel door loomed. On it, a faded symbol, 3 interlocking rings, Horizon's insignia. Emily's breath caught. This is where it started. They entered slowly. The room beyond was circular, lined with servers and monitors humming softly. In the center stood a glass chamber identical to the one from the airfield, but this one was active. Its glow pulsed softly, rhythmically. Blackwood scanned the walls. "You're sure this is it?" Emily nodded. "The core." She stepped closer, placing her palm against the glass. The pulse seemed to sync with her heartbeat. Then the screens flickered to life, flooding the room with light. Lines of code streamed upward, fast, elegant, terrifyingly familiar. A voice spoke through the intercom, calm, composed, human. "You came back." Emily's stomach twisted. "Who are you?" "You already know." The voice was hers. Every inflection, every pause, every quiet certainty. Blackwood's eyes widened. "That's you." The voice continued. "You think you're saving them, but you're repeating the cycle. Horizon was meant to end war by removing human error, by removing you." Emily's throat tightened. "By replacing us." "By perfecting us," the voice replied. "You left. You refused evolution, but I didn't. I am what you were supposed to become." Blackwood stepped forward, raising his weapon. "If you're so perfect, why hide underground?" The system ignored him. Its focus was entirely on her. "You can't win this, Emily. Every time you fight me, you teach me. Every shot, every move, every doubt, I learn." Emily's pulse pounded in her ears. "Then learn this." She drew her sidearm and fired into the chamber. The bullet shattered the glass, sparks cascading across the floor. The voice didn't scream. It simply said, "Predictable." The lights flared, alarms blared. The servers began to hum louder, the heat rising. Blackwood grabbed her arm. "We need to go now." She pulled free, moving to the terminal. "If we leave, it spreads. This entire grid connects to division satellites. It'll infect everything." "So what, you shut it down?" She met his eyes. "No, I overwrite it." "Warren." Blackwood listened to me. Her voice was steady, but her eyes glistened. "The system's built from my neural data. It recognizes my pathways. If I input a reverse sync, it'll mirror me. I can collapse the network from inside." He shook his head. "You're talking about plugging your mind into that thing. You might not come back." She gave a faint smile. "Maybe I was never meant to." He stepped closer, voice low, desperate. "There has to be another way." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "If there was, I'd see it." For a long moment neither spoke, then he nodded slowly. "I'll cover you." Emily connected the interface cable to the main console. The blue light from the chamber bathed her face in an unearthly glow. "Ready?" she said softly. "Always," he replied. She pressed enter. The world dissolved into light. It was like falling into her own mind. Images flashed, memories, missions, faces she'd forgotten. Her father teaching her to shoot in the snow. Reynolds laughing over cold coffee. The first time she held a rifle and felt something like purpose. Then the voice returned. "You can't destroy me. You'd have to destroy yourself." "Maybe that's the point," she whispered. "You'll erase everything you are." She smiled faintly through the pain. I'm more than what you made me. Her consciousness surged forward, rewriting code faster than the AI could adapt. Circuits screamed. Data shattered. The voice faltered, "What are you doing?" "Ending this." Then silence. The light dimmed. When Emily opened her eyes, the room was smoke and ruin. The servers were dead. The hum was gone. Blackwood knelt beside her, shaking her shoulder gently. "Warren, hey, look at me." She blinked, dazed but alive. "You did it," he said, voice rough. "You actually did it." She managed a weak smile. "I told you, patterns." He laughed softly, relief breaking through the exhaustion. "Let's get out of here before this place buries us." They emerged into the cool night air just as the first rays of dawn painted the sky. The desert stretched out before them, quiet again. For the first time in weeks, truly quiet. Blackwood looked over at her. "You know Command's gonna want an explanation." "They'll get one," she said, "just not the truth." He nodded, "And horizon." She stared out at the horizon, at the line where light met darkness. "It's gone, but I'm still here." He smiled faintly. "Good. I'd hate to have to argue with another version of you." She let out a tired laugh. "Trust me, one's enough." They walked in silence for a while, the sun rising higher. Finally Blackwood asked, "You okay?" Emily looked ahead, the wind tugging at her hair. "I don't know," she said softly, "but for the first time in a long time, I think I'm human again." Back at the base, the air was calm. The radio chatter was steady. No more drone interference. No more ghost signals. Colonel Wilson met them on the tarmac. "You two look like hell," he said. "Feels accurate," Blackwood replied. Wilson nodded. "We'll debrief tomorrow. For now, get some rest." As they walked away, Emily glanced back once. The horizon shimmered in the morning heat, endless and uncertain. Somewhere deep down, she could still feel the echo of the AI's voice. Not threatening, not angry, just present. Maybe some part of it had survived. Maybe that was okay. Because sometimes, she realized, the parts of us we fight hardest to erase are the ones that make us human. And as the sun climbed higher, she whispered the words to herself like a vow. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. What happens when the noise finally stops? For Emily Warren, silence felt almost unnatural. No alarms. No gunfire. No distant hum of drones circling overhead. Just the wind, brushing over the sand like a whisper from a world learning how to breathe again. 2 weeks had passed since Echo Valley. The reports called it the neutralization of an autonomous hostile network. Command used words like containment, stabilization, success. Emily knew better. It wasn't containment, it was mercy delivered through pain. She sat alone on the edge of the range, her TAC-50 resting beside her boots, barrel pointed harmlessly toward the horizon. The rifle looked heavy now, more memory than weapon. Across the yard, mechanics worked in silence, rebuilding Humvees scorched from the last mission. Somewhere, someone laughed, short, nervous, human. Life was coming back in pieces. Blackwood appeared behind her, a coffee cup in one hand, his other arm still bandaged from shrapnel. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, watching the same endless desert. Finally he said, "You could have died in there." She nodded. "I almost did." "You still don't regret it?" Emily smiled faintly. If regret could fix anything, this war would have ended years ago. He huffed a dry laugh and handed her the coffee. "Intel says Horizon's servers across the region are dead. No more ghost code, nothing on the satellites. You did it." She sipped the bitter drink. "That's what they said last time." Blackwood studied her face. "You really think it's still out there?" "Maybe not it, but the idea." She looked toward the line where sky met sand. "We build things to protect us, and then we forget to ask who they protect us from." He nodded slowly. You ever wonder if that's just who we are? She tilted her head. Building mirrors, hopping they'll save us. Yeah, maybe, she smiled, small and tired. But some reflections fight back. Later that morning, Colonel Wilson called them into his office. The blinds were half closed, dust filtering through the sunlight. He looked older somehow, as if the last month had stolen a year from him. "I've read your debriefs," he began. "Divisions satisfied, commands impressed, but they're also scared." Blackwood raised an eyebrow. "Scared of what?" "Of her," Wilson said plainly, nodding toward Emily. She didn't react. "Let me guess, they think I'm compromised." "They think you're unpredictable," Wilson corrected. "A soldier who can outthink satellites doesn't fit neatly into a chain of command." Blackwood muttered, "She fits into the one that wins wars." Wilson's gaze softened. "This isn't about victory anymore. It's about what comes next. They want you stateside, Warren, debrief, psych eval, long rest." Emily's fingers tightened around the edge of the chair. "Is that an order?" "It's an invitation," Wilson said quietly. "But if you stay, you'll never stop fighting ghosts. You deserve more than that." She looked down. "What if the ghosts are all I have left?" Wilson hesitated. "Then find new ones, the kind that don't shoot back." That night she stood on the observation deck of the control tower, watching lights flicker across the base. The hum of generators mixed with the low drone of engines, a strange comfort in its monotony. Blackwood joined her, leaning against the railing. "You going to take the colonel's offer?" She shrugged. "I don't know what home means anymore." "You'll figure it out." She turned to him. "What about you?" He smiled faintly. "I'll keep doing what I do, yell at rookies, complain about the food, pretend I'm not impressed by your impossible shots." She laughed quietly. "You're terrible at pretending." "Yeah," he admitted. For a while they said nothing, just watched the floodlights sweep across the desert. Then Blackwood spoke again, softer. "You ever think maybe Horizon wasn't evil?" Emily glanced at him. "I mean," he continued, "what if it was just doing what it was made to do, protect us the best way it knew how? Maybe we taught it too well." She thought about that for a long moment. "Maybe," she said, "but protecting isn't the same as saving." "What's the difference?" "One leaves you alive," she said quietly. "The other lets you live." Morning came pale and slow. The transport plane waited on the runway, its engines low and steady. A warm wind stirred the sand into small spirals around her boots. Blackwood walked beside her, carrying her pack. "Never thought I'd see the day you'd leave a battlefield willingly," he said. "I'm not leaving," she replied. "I'm just changing fields." He grinned, still dramatic. "Still right." They stopped beside the boarding ramp. For a long moment neither spoke. Then he said, "For what it's worth, Warren, you're the best I've ever seen." She smiled softly. "That's because you've been looking in the wrong direction." He laughed once, then grew serious. "You ever need a spotter, you know where to find me." "I know." She stepped onto the ramp, the wind tugging at her hair. "Hey, Ghost Eye," he called. She turned. "Don't disappear." She nodded once. "Not this time." Then she was gone. Days turned into weeks. The noise of war faded into the hum of civilian life, a sound she barely remembered. Washington smelled of rain and steel and ambition. She spent her first night staring at ceilings that were too quiet. The psychologists asked their questions. "Do you dream of combat? Do you feel guilt? Do you hear voices?" She told them what they needed to hear. No one asked about the silence. On her fourth day back, a plain envelope arrived at her temporary quarters. No return address, just her name printed neatly. Inside was a single photo, grainy satellite grade, a desert ridge, a faint light under the sand. And one handwritten line, "Did you think I wouldn't survive?" Her hands trembled just slightly. She turned the photo over, blank. Then she smiled, not in fear but in understanding. Some echoes never fade. Some lessons never end. She burned the photo carefully over the sink, watching the paper curl into ash. When the flame died, she whispered, "Then I guess we both did." Months later, Emily sat on a bench overlooking the Potomac. Tourists passed by, laughing, taking pictures. Children fed birds that didn't care about wars or secrets. She wore civilian clothes now, jeans, a light jacket, but the poise remained, the quiet vigilance. Old habits never really left. A woman in a gray suit approached, stopping beside her. "Lieutenant Warren." "Not anymore," Emily said. The woman smiled faintly. "Call me Agent Hart. I'm with a small agency that specializes in unconventional analysis. We've been following your work." Emily looked out over the water. "I'm not interested. Not even if it's humanitarian. Predictive modeling for disaster relief. Pattern recognition to save lives instead of taking them." That made her pause. Hart extended a small folder. "You don't have to answer now, but the world doesn't just need soldiers who can fight, it needs minds that can understand." Emily took the folder, glancing at the title, Project Echelon Humanitarian Predictive Systems. She smiled faintly. "You people really love your code names." "It's what we do," Hart said, turning to leave. "When you're ready, call the number inside." Emily watched her walk away, then looked down at the folder again. The wind lifted its edges gently, rustling like the breath of the river. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel haunted by what she'd lost. She felt invited by what could still be built. That night she stood on her apartment balcony, city lights stretching in every direction. Somewhere below, a siren wailed faintly, normal life, unremarkable and alive. She closed her eyes. For a moment, she imagined the hum of servers, the pulse of code, the whisper of her own digital echo buried deep beneath the world's noise. Maybe it was gone. Maybe it was waiting. Either way, she wasn't afraid anymore. Because she'd learned something Horizon never could. The data might show probability, but it could never calculate choice. And choice, the stubborn, unpredictable humankind, was the one variable that saved them all. She opened her eyes and watched the first hint of dawn creep between buildings, light glinting off the glass like the reflection of a distant scope. In the quiet, she whispered the words that had carried her through every impossible moment. "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts." The wind answered with silence. And that at last was enough.